Hello, this is Ms. DB. In this video, we are going to go over some details about how to solve the compound inequalities worksheet. So make sure before you begin that you've already done the other inequalities worksheet and that you know that this, I'm going to change that color, means less than. And if we're graphing, if you're graphing x is less than, let's say, 4, you would have a open circle at 4 because we would not want to include that endpoint, and you would go to all the numbers less than that. So you would draw an arrow this way. This means greater than, and you would have, if you had x is greater than 4, you would have an open circle at 4 and an arrow to the right. Now, if either of those had a line underneath it, like if this had a line underneath it, that means less than or equal, and then you would fill in the endpoint. And the same thing if you had greater than or equal, you would fill in the circle. So make sure you know the difference between those and that you are very clear on which direction the arrow should go and whether you should be using a filled in solid endpoint or an open circle for the endpoint. So what we're going to do for compound inequalities is just what it sounds like. We're going to combine two inequalities into one statement. Sometimes those inequalities are combined into one inequality like this. -1 is less than or equal to x is less than 3. And sometimes it's two separate ones with an or in between them. These are both examples of compound inequalities. We're going to look at how to solve both of them. If you look at the or inequality, the first example, they will usually have two parts to the graph. The arrows will usually point away from each other when it's all said and done. And the solution, which this is, will have two separate inequalities with the word or between them. For a compound inequality with the word and, it will usually have just the two endpoints on the graph and a line between them. And the solution, which is what this is, can be combined into one statement. So the first section, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you are going to write the inequalities using those guidelines from up here in order to write these inequalities. Now there's another video that's already added to this assignment that has 1 and 2 solved, so I'm going to look at 3 and 4. So in 3, because there is two endpoints graphed and a line between them, I know that that is the kind that has an and between them. So that means that this is what the solution will look like. I can write the solution in two parts, or I can try to write it in one statement. If I look at the -8, I can see that I want all the numbers greater than -8, and I want all the numbers less than 0. So the endpoints are -8 and 0. Put the lower endpoint on the left, put the greater endpoint on the right, and put x in the middle. Now you have to figure out the signs. Now, a lot of people will put a greater than because I wrote greater than here, and I know that I want all the numbers greater than -8. But this says that -8 is greater than whatever values I want. And really, that means that x is less than -8. I'm really talking about numbers over here then, so that's not correct. So the inequality that I want for here is less than. And the reason that that doesn't match up is because it is not x first, it's -8 first. So -8 less than x is the same exact thing as x is greater than -8. These mean the same thing. These are equivalent expressions. But if I write it this way, then I can combine it in one compound inequality. The second part is easier, it's just x is less than 0. So if you had written this down, that's correct, but then when you want to write it together with the other part of the inequality, then you have to flip the direction of both of them around. Put the -8 here, you switch this, and the x goes here. All right, number 5 is a little, or number 4 is a little easier to write because it's an or. And the or ones, you just have to write them exactly as you see from the graph. You don't have to switch anything around. So we have the endpoint is -2, and it's a solid dot. So I want x is, and it's going to the left, so I want all the numbers less than or equal to -2. And then you must put the word or, because that's part of the compound inequality solution. And then you would write x again, and this time our endpoint, it looks like it's at between 1 and 2. I'll say it's 1.5. And it's an open circle, so I only want the numbers greater than, not including, so I don't underline that one. So practice that. Watch the other video if you want help with 1 or 2. All right, on 5 through 9, you're going to match the written inequality solutions, which are on the right side, with the graphs on the left side. So let's just look at 1 or 2 of these, and we're going to match the endpoints and the direction of the arrows. So we know that and ones, the ones that don't have the word or, will have 2 endpoints and a line between them. Now those endpoints might be open circles, they might be solid dots, we haven't looked at that yet, but I do know that they will have no arrows. It'll just be the line between 2 endpoints. So come over here to your graphs. Which ones would fit with an and type of inequality, where it's 2 dots and a line between them? It looks like this one, and no, not that one. This one, D. So either B or D are both and inequalities because they have 2 endpoints and a line between them. So now we have to look at the endpoints. We have -5 and 1. And because this is both less than or equal, less than or equal, these are both solid dots. So I need 2 solid dots and points at -5 and 1. So you should be able to figure out that this one matches D. And then you can check if the other one, this should be an open circle for -4 because the closest inequality sign is just less than. And it should have a solid dot at -1 and make sure that matches the other one. Now for the or graphs, we have, let's just narrow, that's either A, C, or E. Let's look at the endpoints. In 6 we have a dot, we need an endpoint at -1 and one at 5. And they would both be solid filled in endpoints because it's less than or equal and greater than or equal. So which ones have a solid dot at -1 and 5? It looks like this one. There's -1, there's 5. They're both solid dots. The first one should be x is less than or equal to -1. Yep, that's what that says. And the second one should be x is greater than or equal to 5, and that's what that one shows. So A would match for this one. And I'll let you pick between 7 and 8. All right, now we have some examples of how to graph a little bit more complicated ones where we'll have to solve first. So in this example here, the first step is to rewrite these as 2 separate inequalities. And the way you do that is you just take, here's the first inequality, and then you just would, for the second inequality, you would just shift that over a bit, and there's the second inequality. You write them both. You solve both. You write them both as inequalities, and then you can combine those inequalities into one, and then you graph. And then there's an example of an or. So we're going to look at, number 10 is mostly solved for you. So in 10, this is the inequality. We're starting with the compound one. I already wrote that as -5 is less than or equal to x minus 4, and x minus 4 is less than or equal to 3. And I started solving those. So to solve this one, I would add 4 to both sides, which would leave me with -1 is less than or equal to x. That part's already solved. And then I add 4 to both over here in order to get x by itself, and I get this. So there's 2 separate inequalities, but I can combine those into one. And the way you do that is you put the lower endpoint on the left and the higher endpoint on the right, and then you also have to graph these. So I'm going to do number 11, since number 10 is a lot solved for you already. You can finish that one. I'll do 11 and I'll show you how to make the graphs in Word. All right, so in 11 we have the two inequalities that have been combined are 1 is less than or equal to 3x plus 4. I just took that from right here. That's the left and the middle part. And then the other inequality is 3x plus 4 is less than or equal to 4. So I wrote both of those. Now we have to solve both of those. So I'm just going to move these over a little bit. And you don't have to solve them in one line like this. If you want to do, you can just copy and paste this and put it in another, so you don't have to tab over to do it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe I'll even do that on this one. Okay, so to solve this first part, I need to get the x by itself, and right now it has 4 being added to it. So I need to subtract 4 from both sides. So I'm going to subtract 4 there, and I need to subtract 4 over here. Whoa. And then you would, 1 minus 4 is negative 3. I'm trying to do this in Word like you probably will. And that is less than or equal to, what's left over there is 3x, because 4 minus 4 is 0, so I'm just left with the 3x. Now to solve that, I have to divide both sides by 3. And that leaves me with 3 divided by 3 is 1, is less than or equal to 3x divided by 3 would just be the x. So I'm done with that part. Now I'm going to solve the other part, and I copied and pasted it down here so I wouldn't have to tab over to do all the solutions. Let me get that in one part here. Okay, so now we're going to solve this one. So the first thing I would have to do to solve for x is subtract 4. Whole separate problem here now. Then I would have 3x is less than or equal to 4 minus 4 is 0. And then again, I have to divide both sides by 3. But when you take 3x divided by 3 is x. But when you take 0 divided by any number, it's just 0. Okay, so I have my two solutions. I have my solution of 1 is less than or equal to x, and this is an and problem, and this part right here. All right, so we need to write this as a combined inequality. That's our next step. Take the lower one. So what's lower than 1 or 0? The answer would be 0. And write your less than or equal sign, because that is a less than or equal right here. So we keep that. And then your x. And then your less than or equal sign. And let's look at this here. It says 1 is less than or equal to x, which is the same, if I rewrote this, as x is greater than or equal to 1. I'm just going to double check. Oh, I was supposed to put a negative 3 here, wasn't I? Negative 3, which makes this be a negative 1. I knew there was something wrong on this. Okay, so when I do my lower problem, my lower number here, this would be the negative 1 is the smaller one. And then the less than or equal sign, and then the x, and then the less than or equal. You guys were probably yelling while you were watching the video, no, you forgot the negative. Okay, this works now. And then I need my endpoint. So here's where I was going to show you in Word how to put your graph on the graph, or your solution on the graph. Go to Insert, and then you want a shape. So pictures, there we go, shapes, and I need a point. Under basic shapes, there's an oval shape or a circle shape. That's what I'm going to use to make my point on my graph. I'm going to check if it's filled in. I filled it in last time, so it is. If yours is not, you can, or if you want to change the color, you can change the outlines, you can change all of these tools up here will let you do that. So once you're happy with your endpoint, then you can click and drag that to -1 on your graph. Oh, I'm way low, aren't I? -1. And we need another one of those, so I'm just going to select it again and do Control-C on my keyboard to copy it, and then Control-V, and I need to put the other one at 0. Wow, they're really close together, aren't they? So if I had made this graph a little bit bigger, it would be easier to see that I have one point at -1 and one point at 0. I got that in the wrong spot. There we go. And then I need a line between them to show that all of the points in between those two would be solutions to this inequality. So you can go to Insert, back to Shapes, and pick a line tool. And I just need to draw a line between those two. Now my line is really thin right now, so I can change the weight to something darker. I can change the color to match, you know, something that will show up a little bit. And you don't have to worry if these aren't really lined up correctly. I got the idea. I can see that I want all the points in between and including -1 to 0. All right, 12 is solved in the other video if you need to check how to do that one. 13, let's start 13 and then I'll let you finish it. So the two inequalities to solve. This is an OR problem. That means they're very easy to pick out the two inequalities because they're already there. So I just rewrote them again to make it a little bit easier. Then we're going to solve each of these. So to solve this one, I need to get x by itself, so I would start by adding 2 to both sides. And then that leaves me with 4x minus 1 plus 2. That's the same as plus 1, because you have -1 plus 2. And on the other side, I have that would be greater than or equal to 9. And then you would subtract 1 from both sides. Wait, why did I add 2 to that? I don't know. I can do that, but it doesn't make any sense. I should have added 1 to both sides to undo the -1. Fix that up. And then that way we have a simpler problem. 4x is greater than or equal to 8. Both sides by 4 in order to get the x by itself. And then we end up with x is greater than or equal to 8 divided by 4 is 2. So that's one part of my solution. For the other part, I have to come over here and I have to solve the other side of my inequality. So it says 9x over 2. If I were to write that with a pen, would look like this. 9x over 2 is less than 3. And writing it that way might help you see better what you would do to solve this. To solve this, you would multiply both sides by 2, because right now the x is being divided by 2. And the opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2. So we would multiply both sides by 2, and we're left with, on the left side, 9x, and on the left side, 6. Type that, so we have 9x is less than 6 after multiplying both sides by 2. Now we would have to divide both sides by 9 because we need x by itself. And be careful here, you're going to take 6 divided by 9. Now you can get a decimal if you want. You can divide that with your calculator, or you can simplify the fraction. I could divide both of these by 3, and I would be left with 2/3. So the answer is 2/3. If you type that into your calculator, you would get 0.666666. So don't just write 0.6. Write out enough of those so that we know for sure what it is. Now, when you do an OR problem, you don't combine them as one inequality. You just write them both with the word OR between them. So whatever you got for your answer, you just copy and paste it if you want, or write it again, and put the word OR between them. So x is greater than or equal to 2, or, need the word OR, x is less than 2/3. And then we would graph this the same way we did, except instead of going ahead and inserting shapes and all that, I'm just going to go ahead and copy one of these circles, then come down here and paste it, and then I'm going to put it where it belongs. So greater than or equal to 2 would be right here. And I want that one to show greater than 2, so like 3, 4, 5. So I have to now, I'm going to insert an arrow because I don't have one yet. I kind of like these block arrows. So I need to draw an arrow that shows that I want to include everything this way. And again, you can change the formatting of this. You can turn it red. You can make it thinner or fatter. And then our other point is x is less than 2/3. So if I copy and paste this point, it is filled in for less than or equal or greater than or equal. I need it to be open, so I need to change the formatting of this. So I want this to have no fill, so it's just a circle. See how it's just a circle now? So I'm going to put that one at 2/3. 2/3 is less than 1. Again, my number line doesn't show fractions very well, but I'll just put it there. And I want everything less than that. So I need an arrow, but I need it to point the other way. You can either get a new arrow, or you can copy and paste this one and change its direction by rotating it. Now it's pointing the other way, and I can just attach it to the end of the circle approximately. And it's okay if it's slanting a little bit like mine is. It's not a problem. You can also graph these on a piece of notebook paper and just take a picture and submit it with your assignment if you're doing the rest of your assignment in Word. You can also make these in Geometry Sketchpad. You can make number lines pretty easy in Sketchpad by hiding the y-axis. So let me show you that real quick. I'm going to make the coordinate system show, and then maybe I need a few more points to show. And then I'm just going to hide the y-axis by selecting it, going to display, and hide it. Now I have a number line. I'm gonna hide the grid too. There, now I have a number line. This is so that you can make the number line bigger or smaller. So it's super nice. You can also make many of these number lines by going to File, Document Options, add a page, and we can duplicate this page. So now I've got 2 pages that both are exactly the same, and I can make different problems, and you can do this as many times as you want, duplicate it. All right, so you can welcome to use technology to make your number lines as well. All right, number 14, I want to look at this one as well. This one looks different because it's got it's a combined compound inequality with an and one's a greater than and one's a less than at this point. So let's see what happens here. So I already wrote the 2 inequalities. I just took, oh, and the other reason this one's different is because there's an x on both sides of the inequality for the first part. In the second part, there's only one x, so that one's a little simpler to solve. All right, so I started them already. I started the one on the left by adding one x to both sides to get my x's together. So because I had an x on the right and the left, I have to combine those on the same side. So I'm going to add 1x to both sides. Minus 2x plus 1x, or negative 2x plus 1x, is negative 1x. So I have 3 minus 1x is greater than negative 43. Let's finish solving this one before we look at the other one. So I need to get x by itself, so I need to subtract 3 from both sides. I also added the 1. Like if you look up here, this just says minus x. When I rewrote them, I put a 1 in front of it to make it more clear that when I work with it, that I don't forget that there's a 1 there. Okay, so I'm subtracting 3 from both sides, so minus 1x is greater than negative 43 minus 3 would be even more negative, so negative 46. Now the last step is to solve for x by dividing both sides by a negative 1. And you see what I have starred right below there? Remember that when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to switch the direction of the inequality. So this becomes x is less than, and then I take negative 46 divided by negative 1, and I get 46. So don't forget that when you divide by a negative, you have to switch the direction of the inequality. And then I'll also move over here to the other inequality, and I already started to solve that by adding 43 to both sides. So you get negative 1x is less than 10 plus 43 is 53. And then I, again, need to divide both sides by -1. So remember what happens. Divide by -1. And that means that you have x, like you want, but you have x is greater than, and then 53 divided by -1 is -53. So you have to be sure to combine, or to flip your inequality so that you get the right sign here. So we have x is less than 46 and x is greater than -53. Just going to go through here and make sure I've got all my stuff correct. Plus 1x, minus 1x. I subtracted 3 from both sides. Yep, it looks correct. So my number line isn't going to be, I'll do this one in Sketchpad, because I need one endpoint at 46, and I need the other one at -53. So I don't have, I don't have those on here. Still don't. You know what I can also do is I can make my own number line and just say, okay, I'm going to make my number line to go from -53. I've got that on here, and I'm going to scribble these ones out and say, well, here's 0, and here would be 46, and I need an open circle at my endpoints, and I need less than 46, so I start going this way, and greater than -53, so I start going this way, so it would be the line between those. All right, number 15 is in the other video. You can watch to see how that's solved, and I'll let you solve number 16 on your own. You need to write your two inequalities. I left blank spots for you to do that. Solve each of them. Then write your solution as two separate inequalities with the word or between them, and then graph your solutions. All right, number 17. How many solutions does the graph x is greater than or equal to 2 and x is less than or equal to 2 have? Let's look at this on a number line. If we started to graph x is greater than or equal to 2, you would put a solid dot at 2, and then you want all the numbers that are greater than it. Okay? And we also want x is less than or equal to 2. So you would put a solid dot at 2, it's already there, and all the numbers less than that. But the solution for an AND inequality is only the points in between those 2 points, the 2 endpoints, and there isn't any. However, there is one solution on this graph. These would not be included because it doesn't work for both parts, but there is one solution. So you need to say how many solutions there are and what that solution would be. All right, number 18. To get a grade of B in her algebra class, Stacy must have an average grade greater than or equal to 80 and less than 90. Here's the grade she's got so far. To find the average, you add up all the numbers and divide by how many you have. So if she's going to have one more test, you would add them up plus some unknown number and divide by 4. So I added these up and it is 255. So this part right here is 255 plus x all divided by 4. And that's what I wrote here. If I was writing that without typing it, I could write it like this. Like this. So to solve this, I would have to get x by itself, so the first step would be to multiply by 4. So let's say I was just solving this part. I would multiply both sides by 4, and that would give me 320 is less than or equal to 255 plus x, and then I would finish finding, subtract 255 from both sides to find out what x is greater than or equal to. And then to solve the other side, over here, you would have very similar. You would have to multiply both sides by 4 to begin, and that would leave me with, this 4 is not part of that. That would leave me with 255 plus x is less than 4 times 90 would be 360, and then I would subtract 255 from both sides and get x is less than whatever that value is. So when you're done, you'll be able to write this as a combined inequality of something is less than or equal to x is less than your answer from the other side. This one's just a less than because it says that it must be equal to or between 80 and 90. Okay, so... And B is going to be almost exactly the same thing. This part will be the same. You'll just switch the 80 to a 70 and this to a 90. And then put that in the middle. And then C, you can look back at what you got for answer for A and see if it's possible for her to get an A on this test. All right, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.